and welcome back to another Sports Night interview. And today we are talking Dallas Cowboys football with Joe Hoyt, who covers the team for All City Dallas. And Joe, we appreciate you making some time for us. How you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Just another sunny day outside Cowboys facility here, even though things are not really too sunny with the Cowboys right now. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into all of that right now. The Cowboys sit at 1-2. Probably not the start that they would have hoped for or that many thought they would get off to, but a lot of problems right now on the defensive side of the ball, and we will get into that. But first, I want to ask you about some comments made by the owner, Jerry Jones, on Tuesday. I was reading there was a poll that was conducted by a local Dallas news station, and 78% of the voters said that they blame Jerry Jones for some of the team struggles right now. And I think what is interesting about it is that he came out, he was asked about it actually on his radio appearance, and he said that he understands the frustrations of the fans and that he accepts responsibility and some of the blame for what has gone on the field, some of their struggles that have gone on the field. But at the same time, he also made the comment that he also likes where this team is at right now, and he likes the personnel, he likes the roster and the way that it's constructed. So to me, when I hear that, it seems like maybe he's placing some of the blame on the head coach. So is this Jerry Jones kind of his subtle way of taking a jab at Mike McCarthy and saying, listen, this roster is good enough to win. It's about time you get this team playing better football.
yeah, I mean potentially, but to be honest with you, I kind of think that's just Jerry being Jerry. He's said a lot of vocal support for not only Mike McCarthy but defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer in the wake of this 1-2 start. And to be honest with you, I think Jerry does understand that one, things do start at the top. I mean, he's a businessman, right? He understands that things trickle down, and I think the other thing he understands too is he set the narrative for this offseason way back when, right? Not only bringing back Mike McCarthy, on an expiring contract. Every coach here is on an expiring contract, but also saying, you know what, this is an offseason where we're going to go all in. And then, he cited salary cap, which to be honest with you can be, that could be fixed a little bit. That could have been, they could have got deals done with Dak Prescott earlier. They could have got deals done with CeeDee Lamb earlier. They could have, restructured some contracts. They got Michael Gallup off the books eventually in the offseason. They could have moved money around to maybe go, quote, all in and get a guy like Derrick Henry who just gashed them for 151 yards on 25 carries. So I think what he understands is that, hey, things start with me. I set the narrative this offseason. To be honest with you, and from a personnel standpoint, he thinks he's content with that. But you kind of look around and you see a thin defensive line. You see a running back by committee group that hasn't worked out well. And I think he understands that, hey, if you want to point blame at someone, point blame at me.
Yeah. So, about the personnel, I mean, I think back to some of the comments he made in the offseason where he said that they were going to be all in, right? I believe he made those comments, and we saw that there were really no major upgrades made at all. I mean, you talked about the signing of Dak and the contract with CeeDee Lamb. We know about those, but as far as bringing in new talent, they didn't really do that. And you can see that there's clearly, maybe some issues with the depth behind CeeDee Lamb, the running back position. I mean, when Rico Dwaddle is your number one guy in Ezekiel Elliott, you're going to have some problems running the football. And you mentioned as well the defensive line beyond Micah Parsons and Dexter Lawrence. There's definitely some concerns there for the defense. So I guess, when he says the personnel's in good shape, it's hard to really believe that because you can just see the glaring needs that they have at some of these spots on the roster. And these are things that you can't really upgrade during the season. So how are they going to improve this team right now without having, the players available to bring in?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think just to kind of piggyback off that previous answer that I had, this is something that why fans are frustrated is because they saw a running back room that needed juice this offseason. They saw a defensive line group that lost a lot of pieces. They saw, potential to add another big body wide receiver that never came, right? So I think that's why there is frustration about the moves that weren't made this offseason. They got Eric Kendricks, who, is a valuable piece for them, but obviously, that's just one signing and kind of an unaffordable deal as well. But kind of going back to this point of like, okay, what do you do now? There's really not a lot of what you can do, right? You can kind of take chances on other teams' practice squads, especially maybe on that defensive line. You could you could add Dalvin Cook to the active roster. He's on the practice squad, but they've really kind of preached that, he's a veteran trying to learn the system, right? He's been in the kind of a consistent ramp up period here in practice. He's not going to play this week. That's one thing Jerry Jones said. So I think it's one thing fans are kind of hoping for. But in addition, the offensive line has not really blocked well in the running game either. So I don't know if Dalvin Cook is this magic fix to a running game. So, hey, they've got picks they could trade out. They've got things they can do, but in the end, I don't know if it's enough to kind of fix some of these glaring issues. One thing that cornerback Jordan Lewis talked about yesterday that was, we don't need basically new personnel. We have guys in here that are just not doing the details. They're not being pros, is what he said. You can sense some frustration from a veteran like Jordan Lewis. So I'm wondering if that's kind of something that's been ramping up a little bit in terms of the locker room conversation is, hey, guys, we don't need anyone else, but we need to figure out who we are first and do what we can. And clearly that's not being done right now.
Now sticking with the conversation on the defense, it's interesting. In 2023, this was a top 5 defense in terms of yards allowed per game as well as points allowed per game. And right now, through 3 games, they're bottom 5 in both of those categories. So something needs to change in a hurry. What is new defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer saying about what they can do to fix this? What are the other coaches saying about how they're going to get this defense to play better?
I mean, that's a great question because, to be honest with you, there hasn't really been a good answer. We didn't talk with Mike Zimmer this week. It's a short week. So, usually we get coordinators after the game. This week, because they play on Thursday Night Football, we're not getting to talk to Mike Zimmer. But after last week's game, which was, a big debacle, against the New Orleans Saints where they clearly got exposed, Mike Zimmer said, put the blame on me. I have to coach better. I have to get these guys prepared better. But then Mike McCarthy said, well, our guys need to be quicker to the punch is the phrasing he used. Micah Parsons said, dude, it was effort against the Saints. We didn't have all guys doing their 111. And then this week, Micah Parsons said after the game, we have too many guys playing hero ball, not committing to the system, not doing their job, and so frankly, there's a lot of explanations with no real answer to it. And, I think that one thing they have to do, though, I mean, you got to prove that you can stop the run or else teams are going to keep doing it. Great stat from the Associated Press. The last 2 weeks, the Cowboys have seen 31 pass attempts against them combined between Derek Carr and Lamar Jackson. That's the lowest combined total in a 2-week span against the Cowboys since 1990. This is supposed to be a passing league, right? Well, it's been a long time since they ran the ball like that, but it's kind of seems to be the best formula against the Dallas Cowboys.
So when I hear you say things like, players are playing hero ball and there's problems with players' effort, to me, that makes me think that there's the major problem is with the message from the coaches, and maybe that coaching is the biggest issue here. Now, I know that we talked about expiring contracts for the coaches, and I know coming into the season, despite having 3 consecutive 12-win seasons, Mike McCarthy was one of the coaches that, considered going into the season being on the hot seat. Mike Zimmer in his first year. Is there a chance that if things don't get better, could we see a change at either, the defensive coordinator or even head coach?
Yeah, I think no doubt. I think the one thing, I mean, Jerry Jones has proven that he's willing to kind of recently run out contracts. I mean, we saw with Jason Garrett, they went all the way through with that, but they were also still kind of in that middling, will they or won't they make the playoffs range until the very end of that one. I think anytime you have a coach on an expiring deal, there's potential for, a coach to be removed, but the question that because we've floated this question around to some of the other media members and it's like, well, where do you go? What do you do? It's not like you just turn to Mike Zimmer, who, yeah, he has head coaching experience. But right now, the run defense specifically is the worst part of their game. Do you maybe promote a guy like Al Harris, who's an assistant head coach and kind of a rising prospect as a coach for what he's done with that defensive back room? They have a guy named John Bones Fossil that has interim head coaching experience, is the special teams coordinator, has a lot of, experience with these guys throughout the entire offense, defense, whatever. So you kind of wonder what they would do. I wouldn't put it past anyone. And here's the kind of the kicker. Things could get weird pretty quick because you look at that schedule. I mean, hey, Giants on Thursday night, right, on the road. They don't go on the road on Thursday Night Football often, and here they are. What if Malik Neighbors torches them, right? And then after that, you got Pittsburgh, and then you got the Lions, and then you got the 49ers, and then you got Atlanta. You start going down the list, and it's like, I even tweeted this mid-game last game. How many wins left are on the schedule right now with the current status of this Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, and after that Falcons game, it's the Eagles and the Texans. That's something I had in my notes here.
Yeah.
The next 7 games for the Cowboys is not a stretch of games that those some of those teams have flaws, but if you're looking to get your season back on track, that's a tough stretch of games to try to do it with right there. I want to finish this up with just again some comments on this game here this week. They do head to New York on a short week, as you mentioned. And you never know with these division matchups, these rivalry games. I know the Giants have had some struggles themselves. You mentioned Malik Neighbors. He looks very, very good. How do you expect the Cowboys to respond here on a short week, needing a win very badly?
It's a great question because I think for the first time in a long time against the Giants specifically, I don't know. Um, there are there are some serious issues with this Dallas Cowboys team. I think a lot of people who scoreboard watch might be like, "Hey, they played the Ravens close though. They had a great comeback." No, that was makeup on an exposed game. That was a rough performance after another rough performance. I
Yeah.
think if we're talking Heckle or Jekyll and Hyde here, this is looking more Hyde than Jekyll at this point, and we're trying to figure out exactly who this Dallas Cowboys team is. And I think, frankly, here's the tough part for them. I think they're trying to figure out who they are. And yeah, maybe it's a palate cleanser against the New York Giants, right? A team that they've beaten 12 times in a row, a team that they have their number. But if they lose to a team like that, I mean, instead of palate cleansing, you have a bad stench in your mouth going into a
Yeah.
really, really tough schedule. So, I mean, one thing I think is you're going to want to make Daniel Jones throw the ball. You got to stop the run, but also they haven't proven that they're able to do that. So, and Daniel Jones is athletic, and one thing we saw with Lamar Jackson last week in zone reads, in terms of just gap integrity and knowing what their specific reads were, they could not handle any read option or zone read. And obviously, Lamar Jackson's a little bit faster than Daniel Jones. But I think from just a core standpoint, they struggled against that. So if I'm the Giants, I take that play out of the Ravens playbook and add it to mine and see what the Cowboys can do until they stop it.
Yeah. Sometimes the best thing after a bad loss is to get right back on the field. And as you said, have a little palate cleanse. So we'll see if that happens for the Cowboys. But thank you very much for your time, Joel Hoyt, everybody. You can follow Joe on X at Joe J. Hoyt. And again, thank you so much for your time and all your insight.
Of course, man. Thank you.